All right. Hey, this is Skip Alzheimer. Um, I'm at the beach doing the AV Geeks Lunchtime streaming show, and I thought, well, it's Friday, so I should do this outside. And I have an Ethernet cable that's snaking and dangling from another floor down here, and I could balance the laptop on the railing and get a really cool view of the horrible idea. All of this horrible idea. And so I don't even know if you can hear me over the breeze / wind and the surf. There's sand everywhere. And the internet just kind of popped out for the first time. So I did it, and now I'm like, all right, I probably don't need to ever do this again. But thanks for joining me, indulging me in this little experiment. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. Thank you for your patience. Here's a film about milk. Hopefully I won't be attacked by a seagull. All right.
Here comes Sam to get the milk. One dairyman, one farm. Of the 5 million or more farms that supply this country with billions of pounds of milk each year. Billions of pounds. That's a lot of milk, but it isn't enough. We need more milk. Fresh. Evaporated and condensed. Dried. Milk for butter. Milk for cheese. Dairy products of all kinds to supply nutrition needs of United States civilians, United States servicemen, and our allies. Never enough milk to go around. And now, you might think the dairyman could do something about this. Why not? Producing milk is their business, isn't it? That's just it. It is their business, and they work at it. Look. Up-to-date feeding practices. Modern equipment. Scientific methods. Herds that have been bred for high milk and butterfat production through many generations. You see, these dairymen are already producing to capacity. You can't squeeze more milk out of the high-producing herds till more high-producing heifers mature. But the low-producing cows, we have millions of them idling along on poor or indifferent feed. Farm herds of 5 or 6 cows, or maybe a dozen or more, cows kept as a sideline to general farming. Give them a treatment of the feed and scientific care the high-producing cows get, and their production will really go up. Not just a little, but 10, 15, maybe 20% or more. These are some of the cows that can give us more milk. Keep as many of them as feed and labor permit. If possible, grow more legume hay, pasturage, and grain to support a few more cows. The quantity and quality of feed crops can be increased by fertilizing. Nothing excels well-rotted barnyard manure for improving pasture and hay yields. Use it as far as it will go. Then supplement with commercial fertilizer and lime according to the recommendations of the county agent. Pasturage is the best feed for milk production and usually the cheapest. Many farmers pasture only that part of their land that is too poor to produce a crop, but it takes most of a cow's time and energy to satisfy her hunger on that kind of pasture, with little left for milk production. This dairy farmer puts good land into pasture, land that will grow good crops of corn, potatoes, or grain. He divides his pasture land into 3 or 4 plots. A top dressing of nitrogen and phosphate or lime to a couple of the plots in early spring brings them on about 2 weeks ahead of the others. When the grass is 4 to 6 inches high, he turns in the cows. It takes a week or 10 days to feed off the growth. Then they are turned into the next plot. By this rotation, each plot is pastured about 1 week out of 4. During the other 3 weeks, it is making new growth. Milk production often drops in late summer and fall because pastures have matured and the cows are not getting enough to eat. This slump can be avoided by having good pasture from early spring to late fall. A field of Sudan grass, or millet, planted about the middle of June will provide supplemental feed when other pasture is gone. In the fall, the meadows are grazed. Heavy milking cows need some grain every day, even when they are on good pasture. In winter, hay and silage take the place of pasture. Grow and save an abundance of good roughage for feeding in both summer and winter. Hay is cut before it matures and stored carefully, as green in color and with as little loss of leaves as possible. This kind of hay has a higher protein content and is more palatable than late-cut or weather-damaged hay. If the weather is bad when the crop is ready to cut and shows no sign of clearing, cut it anyway and put it in the silo. Give the cows all of this good roughage they will eat. Cows eat more when given small amounts several times a day. In addition to the roughage, they need a grain mixture containing 12 to 15% protein. A mixture of 100 pounds of linseed, cottonseed, or soybean meal to 900 pounds of homegrown grain, corn, barley, wheat, and oats, when fed with good hay, will produce as much milk as a high-protein grain mix. Farmers agree that the more grain cows are fed, the more milk they will produce. But when grain is scarce and prices are high, feeding becomes a problem. This dairyman maintains high milk production in spite of a shortage of grain by selective feeding. In this herd of Holsteins, every cow is given all the roughage she can eat. If a cow produces less than 20 pounds of milk a day, she gets no grain. But for every 2 pounds above 20, she gets 1 pound of grain. Feeding according to production does not increase the grain bill. It just puts the grain where it will do the most good. Allow each cow a dry period of 8 weeks, calving every 12 months. Feed them liberally during their dry period so they will be in good condition at calving time. For better herd replacements, breed to good bulls. Good proved sires offer the most promise, whether their service is available as individual herd sires or through cooperative breeding associations. With such an ancestry, this Jersey calf has a right to be good. Milk is the basic food for small calves. Exercise, sunshine, and pasture help to build good size and bone structure. A balanced ration running from legumes and grasses in the growing season to roughage and grain and succulent feeds when pasture is gone will produce well-grown heifers that can be bred to calve at 2 years. On the successful dairy farm, cleanliness is indeed next to godliness. A manure carrier makes the cleaning chore easier. Care is taken to make the best possible use of this important fertilizer. Stalls are swept and watered down, spick and span for their occupants. Rough treatment and high milk production never are found on the same farm. Cows have to be handled gently. Don't rush them in from pasture or in and out of the barn. Let them take their time. Keeping cows comfortable always pays good dividends. It isn't necessary to have an expensive barn. What they need is a shelter that will keep them dry and protect them from cold winds. Give them plenty of feed and ample bedding. Don't confine them in stanchions too long without exercise, and see that they have plenty of water. In warm weather, cows need a lot of water and often. In winter, they should have water at least twice a day, preferably with the chill taken off and right after they have eaten dry roughage. Have clean, healthy cows. Milk quickly, using clean methods and clean utensils. When your herd responds, don't let carelessness defeat your gains. Have good quality milk and avoid waste. Strain and cool the milk in clean surroundings. Keep the milk cold until delivered. Wash equipment promptly and treat with chemical agents, boiling water, or live steam. Keep equipment dry and away from dust, dirt, and flies until the next milking. Marketing quality milk has always been good business for the dairy farmer. The demand for good dairy products is steadily increasing. Follow the simple dairy practices outlined, and we will have more milk.
So that was from the USDA, United States Department of Agriculture. And it's one of the few government agencies that had their own film unit. I've noticed with some other government agencies that they oftentimes farm it out to other companies like Willard Pictures, or Norwood, or there's quite a few other ones that even Disney actually did some for different government agencies. But the USDA had their own film unit, so there's lots of films that were made by them. So there you go. There's a little trivia for you. I want to say thanks everybody for tuning in and for indulging me in this experiment of doing this outside at the beach. If you like what you're watching, or you want to support this kind of outrageous behavior, you can buy us coffee by going to this link right here, buymecoffee.com/avgeeks. You can also go to the AV Geeks website and see previous shows that we've done, and there's DVDs for sale there. You can also tell the world that you like AV Geeks by hitting like, subscribe, the notification thing, comments, sharing, etc. All right, this next film is a little bit longer. It's about another government agency. It's about the Federal Reserve, and this is made by somebody. I can't remember the name of the company. It's a longer film, but it's great. It shows money being printed, it shows money being burned, it shows how money works. It tries to explain how important the Federal Reserve is to the average Joe. So, money on the move. Enjoy.
In 1626, Sir Minuit purchased Manhattan Island from the Algonquin Indian Nation. No deeds to sign, no mortgage, no checks. It was a simple exchange, $24 worth of trinkets for the island of Manhattan. Today, with the tremendous growth of our nation, the same transaction would be enormously complex, involving real estate men, lawyers, and bankers. Years later, in 1781, the first bank was founded in Philadelphia. Since its founding, banks have kept pace with growing America, increasing in size, in services, and in numbers. Today, there are over 13,000 banks in the United States. Over 6,000 of them, with almost 85% of the banking assets, are members of the Federal Reserve System, a nationwide banking organization with 12 banks and 24 branches throughout the United States. This is the Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland, Ohio. An economics class from a local university is supplementing its classwork with a visit to the Cleveland Bank. The group will be addressed by one of the bank's staff economists, Dr. Hackett.
Good morning, and welcome to the Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland. The Federal Reserve System was created by an act of Congress in December 1913. Its original objectives were to provide for an elastic currency and to improve the supervision of banking. These objectives recognized that the existing money system did not work satisfactorily and that a central bank was needed for money to do its job. Over the years, the system has been entrusted with much broader responsibilities, either through usage or through amendments to the original act. The Federal Reserve System consists of a board of governors in Washington and 12 banks, each serving a different region of the country. Each Federal Reserve District is served by a reserve bank located in a key city. Each reserve bank is a corporation organized and operated for public service. Most reserve banks also have branches in other major cities within their district. The Board of Governors consists of 7 members, appointed by the President of the United States and confirmed by the Senate. They are appointed for terms of 14 years. The President designates one of the 7 as chairman of the board for a term of 4 years. The Board of Governors supervises the operations of the Federal Reserve System and has major responsibility for formulating national monetary policy. Not all commercial banks are members of the Federal Reserve System. National banks are required by law to be members. State-chartered banks may become members if they wish to, upon meeting certain requirements. Each reserve bank has 9 directors, chosen for 3-year terms. 6 directors are elected by member banks in the district. 3 of these are bankers. 3 come from industry, trade, or agricultural activities. And 3 directors are appointed by the Board of Governors in Washington. They may not be bankers.
Through the powers granted by Congress, the Federal Reserve's responsibilities toward furthering the nation's economic objectives have grown. These objectives include economic growth, maximum employment, reasonably steady prices for the goods we buy, a rising standard of living, improvement in the position of the United States in world markets. To promote these objectives, the government employs a variety of economic tools. For example, by changing the tax structure, it can directly influence the spending of individuals and business concerns. The volume and nature of government spending also has a direct effect on the economy. The effect of Federal Reserve action on the economy is indirect. Its job is to be sure the economy has enough money and credit to operate effectively. The Federal Reserve can't tell people how or why to spend their money. It can only add to or subtract from the total amount of money in the country. Part of the effect of Federal Reserve actions is on the cost and availability of credit. This is important to this family and to thousands of others who buy homes with borrowed money. The Federal Reserve is constantly observing and analyzing economic trends and financial conditions. They must translate these facts and analyses into decisions on the proper course of monetary policy. To this end, the Federal Reserve is continuously collecting and studying facts and figures from all over the world. Also, vital information is provided by the 12 Federal Reserve banks and their branches. Here in Chicago, the Federal Reserve Bank analyzes all kinds of local economic activity. These figures deal with real people and real events. To the researcher, they are packed with meaning. Automobile production is up, but steel sales to automobile producers are down. What are the implications concerning inventories of finished goods and materials? Retail food sales are larger than a year ago, but a smaller share of consumers' income. What does this indicate about future consumer spending? How does it affect business? The industrial use of electric power is accelerating in Chicago. Does this reflect a rise in industrial output? When information such as this has been evaluated, it is used to brief staff members, the bank's board of directors, and in particular, the president of the Reserve Bank. Each Federal Reserve Bank sends similar information to the Board of Governors and to other reserve banks, and makes it available to the public, to schools, trade associations, newspapers, to everyone who wants to be informed about economic developments in this Federal Reserve District. In another district, the staff economists of the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta review the studies of business and financial conditions in their district. They submit their findings to the president of the Atlanta Bank, who reviews their report with them in preparation for meetings of the Federal Open Market Committee in Washington, D.C. Other sources of information are the men on the boards of directors of the Federal Reserve banks across the country. Outstanding men from various and diversified fields of business. Men who, because of their positions of leadership in their respective fields and their familiarity with the region's economy, provide their Reserve Bank's presidents with an on-the-spot interpretation of the latest business developments. Developments which may not have been reflected in the current statistics. In Washington, this information is presented to the Federal Reserve Open Market Committee. The committee is composed of 7 members of the Board of Governors, the president of the New York Reserve Bank, and the presidents of 4 other reserve banks on a rotating basis. They meet in Washington every 3 weeks to interpret the significance of the information for national economic conditions. They give this and similar reports of other reserve banks careful consideration when they determine the monetary action for the next few weeks, particularly the buying and selling of government securities. The facilities of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York are used to carry out the decisions of the Open Market Committee. Here, U.S. government securities are bought and sold through specialized dealers. These transactions have a direct effect on the amount of money in the hands of the public. When the system buys securities, It pays for them with a check drawn on the New York Reserve Bank. The seller of the security who receives the check has newly created money. What the Federal Reserve has done is substitute money for government securities in the hands of the public. When the system sells securities, the buyer pays for them with a check drawn on his account at a commercial bank. The New York Reserve Bank collects on the check by deducting the amount from the account that the bank maintains with the Federal Reserve. What the system does is to remove from circulation the money received, while the purchaser substitutes securities for money in his holdings. Boston, Massachusetts, the historic city on the Charles River. The home of the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston. Serving Federal Reserve District 1, made up of the 6 New England states, over 10 million people. People like Mr. and Mrs. Blake. The Blakes are about to start off on their annual vacation. They have everything they need for 2 weeks of fun and travel. Everything, that is, except cash. Mr. Blake depends on his neighborhood bank to provide him with cash when he needs it. His bank depends on the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston. When the bank's supply of cash gets low, it orders more from the Reserve Bank. Or when the bank has more cash than it needs, the excess is deposited into its account at the Reserve Bank. Both bills and coins that come back to reserve banks are carefully inspected. Unfit bills are taken out of circulation. They are carefully counted and wrapped in packs of 100, then each pack is canceled. Later, the canceled notes are incinerated at the reserve banks or at the Treasury in Washington. A dollar bill has an average life of about 13 months. Coins are also carefully inspected. Worn or bent coins are rejected at the Reserve Bank and are returned to the mint for remelting. The average amount of cash in circulation is about $35 billion. The amount changes with the time of year and the level of business activity. Generally, it rises over most holidays and in the second half of the year. It reaches its peak at Christmas, when it's usually $2 billion larger than in January. Reserve banks always keep large stocks of currency on hand, ample for any need. This type of currency, called Federal Reserve notes, makes up about 85% of our paper money. New currency is supplied to meet the demands of people like the vacationing Blakes. Soon, their money will be hard at work in the cash registers, pocketbooks, and payrolls of America. Halfway across America is Federal Reserve District number 9, with headquarters in Minneapolis. In this district is the town of Owatonna, with its famous bank designed by the father of American architecture, Louis Sullivan. New to Owatonna are the Johnsons, Cliff and Mary. Today, they're opening an account. The reserve required of their bank as a member of the Federal Reserve System helps to assure them of the bank's ability to redeem their deposits whenever they should need the money. They probably haven't noticed this man working a few feet away. He's a bank examiner for the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis, but he doesn't spend much time there. Each Federal Reserve Bank examines state member banks at least once a year. Other banks are examined by other governmental agencies. The bank examiner is primarily a fact finder and appraiser. He wants to know the financial condition of the bank and that it is complying with necessary laws and regulations. Sound banking practices not only benefit the banks themselves, but also help to safeguard the funds entrusted to them by their depositors, like the Johnsons. "400 miles downriver from Owatonna is the headquarters of another Federal Reserve District, St. Louis, Missouri. Here in a midtown office building, a local businessman is transferring funds through Federal Reserve facilities.
Jack, I've been trying for weeks to get Smith to sell me that store of his out in southeast Kansas. He just told me he's willing to sell if he receives the cash down payment immediately, before the close of business today. And you'll give the instructions for the transfer to the St. Louis Federal Reserve. Okay. And they'll transfer the money via the Federal Reserve Telegraphic Network to the Federal Reserve Bank in Kansas City. I understand. Then the money will be credited to the account of Smith's bank, which in turn will credit his checking account. All but the close of business today. Fine. Thanks very much, Jack. Bye.
The nerve center of this nationwide telegraphic network is located in the Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond. Here, messages are received and relayed to and from the 12 district banks, the 24 branch banks, and the Board of Governors in Washington, D.C. Through this vast telegraphic network, each element of the system can communicate quickly, efficiently, and confidentially. Although large sums are transferred daily this way, a more common method is sending a check. Here in California, this grandmother has... Soon she will make use of the Federal Reserve System's check-clearing facilities, because one of her presents is that check from her grandmother. When Patricia cashes the check, her bank will start it immediately on its way back to California. First, it will be sent to the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas. The check will be sorted and added to other checks drawn on banks in the 12th Federal Reserve District with headquarters in San Francisco. When it arrives, it will be delivered to the Federal Reserve Bank. By reading the special language at the bottom of the check, this electronic machine will sort, record, and add it to other checks drawn on grandmother's bank. With a final sorting, it will finally reach its starting place after a round trip of more than 1,500 miles. If the 16 million checks cleared by the Federal Reserve every day were put end to end, they'd reach all the way from grandmother's house in California to Patricia Collins' house in Oak Cliff, Texas. Through these millions of checks, the payments that keep our economy running are made between checking accounts at banks. This is money, checkbook money, on the move. The costs of providing this service, like most Federal Reserve services, are covered for the most part by earnings on its securities. Large surpluses are returned by the Federal Reserve banks to the United States Treasury each year. "3,000 miles east of San Francisco in Allentown, Pennsylvania, this young man is about to make an important investment." Pete Zimmerman distributes the local newspaper. He's been saving his money, and now he's going to invest it in a United States savings bond. Like other commercial banks, this bank sells savings bonds as a public service. When Pete pays for his bond, the money will be included in a credit to the government's account here in the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia. Like the other reserve banks, the Philadelphia Bank keeps the checking account of the U.S. Treasury for its district and performs many other banking services for the United States government. One of them is issuing savings bonds. Along with the record of bond sales, the duplicate cards are sent to the Treasury Department. This protects the owner's property rights if the bond is lost or accidentally destroyed. The Federal Reserve also redeems savings bonds. When a bond is redeemed, the amount will be deducted from the government's account. The Federal Reserve banks hold for safekeeping large amounts of government securities for the U.S. Treasury and for member banks. Securities in denominations as large as $1 million. Every year, reserve banks issue, exchange, and redeem more than $500 billion worth of government securities. Sorting, counting, and redeeming coupons from government securities is part of the job of helping the government with its borrowing operations. Handling the government's checking account is another important job. Payments received for taxes, Social Security, and sales of saving bonds are deposited into government accounts at the 12 Federal Reserve banks. The government then writes checks against those accounts to pay operating expenses. Reserve banks handle more than 1 million government checks every day. More than $100 billion worth every year. Whether the sum involved is Pete Zimmerman's $18.75 or $1 million, the Federal Reserve handles the transaction with equal care and dispatch. In the future, about 8 years from now, when Pete Zimmerman's bond matures, it will have a face value of $25. At one time, more than enough to pay for the entire island of Manhattan. But times have changed. Our nation is growing. Symbols of growth are everywhere. To help keep the American economy healthy is the primary function of the Federal Reserve System. The nation, through Congress, has delegated to the Federal Reserve the task of regulating our monetary system in a way that will result in attaining the national goals of full employment, reasonably steady prices, and continued economic growth. Economic growth which must extend into the marketplaces of the world. By harmonizing the conflicting interests of a free economy, the Federal Reserve helps to maintain our nation's economic leadership throughout the world.
film brings up so many questions and things to talk about, and oh wow, like the video, I just noticed the video effect is really weird. Tried to lighten the camera a little bit, and now it's all posterized. Anyways, so you saw the Thomas Craven company made that, and I was like, man, that narrator, what was his name, Luis von Houten, something like that. I was like, he sounds familiar. So I pulled up this film, which I showed last year, but I'm gonna just kind of bring it up, and then I'll skip to where we can hear the narrator, and maybe to the credits to see if it's the same guy. All right, here's Check the Net.
Hey, let's go. This guy's out.
Hurry up there. Move along.
Let's go. I'll check the other guy.
Get him out. Get him out.
Get him out.
Careful now.
Who's that? Jeff?
There.
He's badly hurt.
Did he hurt you?
Watch it.
Boy's got a big head.
Off of that.
Yeah. Hold it down. You don't really want it.
Get in here.
What's the matter? How is he? Is he alive? Boy, there was some accident, huh?
Alive? Yes. And not critically injured. But because they have failed to take a simple precautionary check, the very people who have rushed to his aid may cost him his life. For the accident victim is a laryngectomy. The neck.
Bring it out.
Nope, totally different guy. Okay, I'll take it. Totally different guy. We don't always have the benefit of having credits who credit the narrator. More often with films for adults, we'll see credits, but not for kids. Speaking of ones for kids, here's one to start your Memorial Day weekend. It's part of the Magic Moments series where Encyclopedia Britannica went a little crazy. This is called Choosing Up.
I got odds.
I got even.
One size three shoe. You got it. One size three shoe. I got it.
Ones, twice, three, shoot. I got ones, twice, three, shoot.
I got it.
Ones, twice, three, shoot.
I got it. I got first choice. Janet, Eric, Gerald, Tom, Anthony, Sean, David.
Which one do you want, heads or tails?
Heads.
I've got tails.
I won. I got first choice. Anthony.
Daryl,
Brian.
Eric,
Jimmy.
Larry,
Duncan.
Levin,
Mike.
Tom.
Sean.
Okay, I got first choice. Sean. I got Dennis. Mike. I got Larry. Brian. I got Daryl. I got Jimmy. Guy, you don't have to smack. He's smacking. That's Larry. He's Larry. That's you. That's you. Is it right?
Nope, it's rubber.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, it's big.
One for you, one for me. Take room. All right.
Give me my stick back. Take a stick.
One at a time. Hey, you guys. Hey, Anthony, we can see the small one already.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I thought this was...
Oh, God.
Oh,
He
come
got
on.
it.
Uh-oh.
And do right there, got it.
Oh, no, now the last four. Two more. Oh, man. Anthony's in. Enough. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100. Here I come, ready or not.
So it just started raining here. And the deck above me is not really offering a whole lot of protection against the rain, so I'm trying to keep now not only sand from getting into the computer, but rain. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We will be back on Memorial Day, and maybe we'll do some special programming related to that. I don't know. We'll see. Certainly, since I'm back at the archive, I can pull stuff. And oh yeah, this rain is getting crazy. Anyways, here's the beach. Thanks for joining me at the beach, everybody. And we will see you next week. Everybody have a great weekend. Take care of yourself. Love yourself. Love other people. All that hippie stuff. Thanks again for tuning in. If you liked what you saw, you can buy us coffee, etc., etc. All right, it's getting kind of crazy. All right, take care, everybody.